Start with the video. We call that Revenge of the Grid Girl. Probably, if you haven't seen that already, that's probably not what you were expecting from Aston Martin. Probably your traditional view of Aston Martin and our customers, probably British, middle-aged, nice sweater. The future is 20 years younger, Chinese, female, and so as CMO of the company, a whole bunch of really interesting challenges, hence why I thought, well, you know what, how are we behaving as a company? How am I behaving as a CMO? We're behaving like a startup. I'm going to ground you in some basics of the business, and then we'll get into talking about the interesting challenge that I have as a marketeer, which is creating content, creating messages for effectively two audiences. One audience, the people that can and might buy our cars, and the second audience is the people that would love to but probably will never buy our cars but are fans of the brand. And it's a really interesting mix for a luxury brand to be in that position. So we're 105 years old. The key takeaway is we've built 83,000 cars in 105 years, so we take our time, and that would take Toyota 3 days to put it in context. So we're in a global auto industry of about 90 million cars a year. China alone is 20 million cars a year. There are 83,000 Aston Martins, so we're not exactly everywhere. We're in an industry that is changing more radically. I suspect America will bear this out. Anyone that's been in the car business for a while, we're entering a period of unprecedented change, driven by massive innovation and enabled by huge advances in technology. So there's a lot of talk in our industry about horse to horseless carriage, and we're probably in a period where the seismic shift is as great as that transition to the horseless carriage. And the easy way to remember it, an acronym is CASE. So connected, autonomous, shared mobility, and electrification. A little bit more about that. And you might think that a brand like Aston Martin and the luxury space that we play in, we're sort of immune from this. You know, who wants to drive an autonomous Aston? Well, you don't drive an autonomous car, but who wants to be in an autonomous Aston Martin? Not a bit of it. All of these are affecting our brand and will affect our brand to a greater degree in the future. If you unpack our business, we break it down into three broad areas. Sports cars, which is what we're famous for, so the DB lineage, the Vantage, Vanquish, and Rapide. The newest segment, the fastest growing segment in the luxury space is SUVs. So you've seen Bentley already launch the Bentayga, Lamborghini are coming with their car this year, Rolls-Royce will have an SUV next year, and as will we. We start production in our new factory in Wales of a car based off the DBX concept next year. So by the time you're ready to buy your next SUV in 2020, you'll have a choice of 4 luxury cars. That's off the back of Range Rovers and Porsches and Maseratis and everyone else who's getting into this space. And then on the left-hand side, what we call large platform vehicles, which is the Lagonda brand, effectively. So we are 2 brands in one company. We're Aston Martin Lagonda. Lagonda is an older brand than Aston Martin, and we will relaunch Lagonda as part of our 7-year business plan. And you can read here the various components, and I'll talk through some of those in the presentation. We're also in the midst, so we're 3 years into a 7-year transformation plan. We're owned by private equity, so if any of you know Aston Martin, we used to be owned by Ford Motor Company. Ford sold out in 2006. 5% of the company is owned by Daimler, Mercedes. The rest of the company is held by private equity. Our CEO, Andy Palmer, joined a little over 4 years ago. I joined about 1 month later. Andy and I used to work at Nissan together. And we're sort of halfway through-ish, almost, our transformation. So the first 3 years, super hard work, getting the business right-sized, getting it structurally right, getting the cost base right, investing in the new products and platforms, and setting out a long-term plan, which Aston Martin, frankly, in the past has not had much of a vision beyond the next car. And that was part of the fundamental business challenge of the company, is it was one car and then another car, and the money you made off one car would then fund the next car. So we work in a business where, compared to tech, auto has very long cycles. So the average cycle time for a car today is 6 years, life cycle, with a mid-cycle refresh. Our cars were getting towards 9, 10 years old, so we were way out of whack with the industry. We've brought that down now, so we're on 7-year cycles with a mid-change. If you add all the derivatives that we're doing, specials and so on and so forth, we have a new product action every 3.5 months for 7 years. So it feels pretty intense at the moment. A little bit about our results. So this is where marketing meets finance. And this is a relatively unique concept for Aston Martin, which is to be profitable. So we're enjoying the fruits of it. I mean, turnarounds are bloody hard. Any of you who've been through a turnaround will know just how difficult it is. I would say now the hard work actually really starts, which is now building a sustainable, profitable company. And the entire management team is obviously focused on that. And we're just entering. Vantage that you saw in the video is only the second of 7 cars that we're launching. So we're just at the very early stages. So encouraging early signs. Product momentum, top left, Vanquish Zagato, so part of a run of 99 cars, about £500,000 each, sold out. DB11 Volante, just going into production. That's got our new V8 in it. Vantage started production in April, so we're taking orders now, so happy to talk to you at the coffee break about that. And the DB4 GT Recreation Series, so bringing back an icon from our past, but doing it in a legitimate way. So built in the original factory in Newport Pagnell, near Milton Keynes, 25 off, unbuilt chassis numbers, about £1.5 million each. So, and sorry, sold out. Talking of sold out cars, this is the Valkyrie. This is what happens when you lock Adrian Newey, Red Bull Racing, Marit Reitman, our chief designer, and the engineering team in a room together, pump lots of Red Bull in, and you get Valkyrie. Valkyrie is probably the most extreme performance car that, and I'm sounding hyperbolic here, but it's a remarkable project to work on. We're building 150. Start of production is next year, all sold out. Adrian has wanted to do a car for a very long time. We knew Adrian Christian from previous experiences. We signed a deal with him in 2016 that also enabled us to get into Formula One. And Valkyrie is the product of that. So for any of you nerds out there, it's a 6.5 litre, normally aspirated, so no turbocharging, 6.5 litre V12 normally aspirated engine, mid-mounted. Lots of interesting technical challenges here. For example, the exhaust ports out the top deck of the rear of the car, and so the problem we have is that it's too close to the license plate, so the number plate would melt. So we're having to figure out new technologies for number plates, so the ambient temperature out of the engine, out of the exhaust, doesn't melt the license plate. It's a good excuse when you get stopped speeding. I was trying to cool my license plate. We're also, I mentioned the challenges facing our business. So, electrification. And this is when we announced this product, quite polarizing in many ways, because people were sort of, but part of the joy of an Aston Martin is the noise, is the sound of the V8 or the V12. I said that we couldn't escape the forces that are changing our industry so fundamentally. And the Rapide E, which we would argue is the first luxury electric car, goes on sale next year, developing with Williams Advanced Technologies. this is the first step for a future that will see by mid-next decade every single Aston Martin either electrified or hybridized. So it's going to happen, and it's in our best interest to learn pretty damn quick how to do it. Another area of interest, and this is a part of a trend that we're seeing in the luxury business, is luxury brands getting into adjacent and very non-adjacent segments. So the vision here for the Aston Martin residences in Miami, which is in construction right now, 301 apartments, 650,000 US through to 50 million for the top penthouse. Property developer approached us, said they were building this building, they wanted to give it a personality, a character, and we were, well, we're not really real estate guys. And when we got into it, and when we started to think about how we translated our values into real estate, we actually said, you know what, actually this could work, and the proof, you'll see it going up if you're in Miami, is Aston Martin residences. Also into marine. So you know, you can arrive at your residence in your Aston Martin naturally, park it. If you feel like going to the beach, you can take your Aston Martin AM37 speedboat. So that's now on sale. Or if you want to be very discreet, you can actually take your Aston Martin submarine and go invisibly to the beach. And yes, we are doing a submersible Triton that's the world leader in personal submersibles. This is a new category that's emergent. People put these on the back of their super yachts. And they came to us and they said, we'd really want to give our submersible a different character from the other ones out there. And we looked at that, and again, where it makes sense and where we feel our brand values can translate in a credible way. Brand experience. So let's talk now about how we communicate. And I mentioned earlier the sort of challenge of communicating to a potential customer and communicating to a fan. We undertook a pretty lengthy brand study a couple of years ago, and it was really just to gut check, sanity check, that we're on the right path of the brand. You know, the business was in turnaround. Were the values of the brand clear? Were they, first of all, and most importantly, were they clear internally? You know, why do people come to work? And we zeroed in on what we believe is the essence of Aston Martin, which is beauty. So we're selling a product that you don't need. Yeah? We're selling a product that you want, that generates desire. We did away with our tagline. So we remember we used to be Power, Beauty and Soul. It used to come up on the car when you started up. So we moved away from a tagline. We want the product and everything that we do to embody this notion of beauty. Our approach, and as you might imagine, when companies talk about knowing their customer, often that relationship is on a spreadsheet. It's looking at data, and we do that too. We have Salesforce as our CRM platform, so we're looking at a lot of data. But genuinely, we do know our customers because they come and see us. We talk to them. We find out what they want. We ask them what they want. We often build them what they want if they've got some really interesting ideas. So the personal experience, and this is where this is different from transportation. So buying into a luxury car, be it an Aston Martin, a Ferrari, a Lamborghini, or whatever it might be, is and should be a very much a personal experience. You know, 83,000 customers in 83,000 cars in 105 years, and telling the story and inviting people into our family. And it sounds a bit hokey today to welcome to our family, but genuinely, when you buy into a luxury brand, a small luxury brand, you should feel like you're buying into family. And if any of you own an Aston Martin or aspire to own an Aston Martin, and you haven't been to our factory in Gaydon, that should feel like home for you. You should be able to come in and feel relaxed, have a look at your car being built, you know, get to know us. Broadly, and again, this dictates quite a lot of obviously how we communicate, is the broad differences. And I worked in premium and I've worked in mass, and it's quite interesting. The luxury space is quite different. And I think the biggest difference is this personal relationship, and is this, people want to know where their car was built. They want to know that the leather that we put on an Aston Martin comes from Scotland, from long-haired cows. Do you know why we only use long-haired cows? Because they don't get bitten by mosquitoes. So the leather is flawless. And by the way, if you want a vegan car, we can make you a car without leather. So get that out of the way as well. And you know, the relationship that our customers have with the top management, with the CEO. Any of you follow Andy Palmer, I see on Twitter. I mean, he's 24/7. So the difference is versus a product that you just grab and go, you don't know where it was built, you don't know who made it, you don't know who designed it. Maybe it's not important. I think we are, however, moving to a space where people are starting to want to know what they're buying, what they're putting in their mouth, what they're putting on their back, where it comes from, who's creative, what's the story behind it. And that's where the luxury space actually does quite well. You know, if you buy a Kelly bag or a Birkin bag from Hermes, you can go to the atelier and you can see it being made. You know, that's a really special experience, and ergo you can come to Gaydon to see your Aston Martin being made. Experience, you know, talking a lot about digital, this creates content, so I've got a lot of channels to fill, but the best way, honestly, I can try and convince you that an Aston Martin will enhance your life is to get you into the car, to get you to the factory, for you to sit in the car, for you to smell the leather, and for you to drive it. So we put a lot of when we talk about how much of our marketing budget we allocate to different areas, experience really takes quite a lot of our budget. And our brand centre there, top left in Dover Street, just 5 minutes around the corner if you want to go and have a look. A lot of talk in our industry about the future of retailing. All the surveys that we see about people's experience buying cars, and I come from a background of car dealers. My brother's a car dealer, so I think I can say this. People really hate buying cars. You'd rather go and have root canal. And you walk in, and what should be is your second largest purchase after buying a house. You walk in, you're defensive, you think you're going to get conned, you're not sure, is the salesman really telling you? So this whole dynamic is really troubling for our industry. Increasingly people are obviously shopping online and will increasingly, I think, buy their cars online, if they even in the future obviously buy cars. This we see as much more of the future of how we get you introduced to our brand. This is our new brand centre in Aoyama. Behind, I don't know if I can point to it, there is the actual dealership. So that's where we actually sell the cars. The front of house is about the brand experience. So we might have a car from the 1950s there, which is not for sale. You know, this is about how we communicate our values, about getting people to understand what Aston Martin stands for, and it just happens to be right slap bang opposite the Bentley and Lamborghini store. They were so pleased when we arrived. Content and experience. So we are traditional in some sense in that we sponsor things, we race things, and we are now working with more brand ambassadors. So a quick overview of some of the areas that we work on. We're well known for endurance racing. We won Le Mans last year in our class, which was great. It was a really great feeling to be there. Last lap, we overtook the Corvette. That was a hell of a day. We're in Formula One. I mentioned the relationship that we have with Adrian, with Valkyrie. If you come up to Milton Keynes in a few months' time to visit the Red Bull factory, you'll also see the Aston Martin Technology and Engineering Centre. So we're going to have designers, engineers, some of my marketing team will be based in Milton Keynes next to the Red Bull factory. So this isn't just about stickers on a car, this is about joint engineering design projects. And I was talking with someone just before this session, watch what Liberty Media are doing with Formula One. You know, No Grid Girls is just the start. I feel hugely excited about what they're going to do to this sport. Formula One, after World Cup Soccer and the Olympics, is one of the largest sporting platforms in the world. And it's great that on the grid in Melbourne, in a few weeks' time, there'll be a Ferrari, there'll be a McLaren, and there'll be an Aston Martin. It's just the right place for us to be. On the flip side, no engines at all. So again, balancing how we're communicating our brand to who, and Henley Regatta. So Steve Redgrave took over as chairman of the stewards a couple of years ago, and he wanted to start to introduce relevant and appropriate commercial partners. And Henley is, I'm sure many of you have been, it's a 200-year-old plus organization. It's a wonderful day out. And they approached us. And we didn't know a lot about rowing, but the more we got into the sport and the technology and the endurance and the parallels between how rowers train and how our drivers increasingly train for Formula One and endurance racing, rowing actually made a lot of sense, and we've since actually signed up to support the head of the Charles River in America, so we now are partners for the two most prestigious rowing events in the world. Last year was just our first year. America mentioned about community paying back. We have two principal charities that we support, Prince's Trust, so we're very proud to carry the Prince of Wales crest, and we support the Royal Air Force Benevolent Fund, and we did a really cool thing, and this has been one of the biggest content generators from last year, was we created the Red Arrows Edition Vanquish, and this was something the Red Arrows wanted to do. Red 10, the 10th car, was donated to the Royal Air Force Benevolent Fund, and if you think about subject matter for content creation, fast red jets and cars, it doesn't really get much better, and hugely successful. The car's sold out, and the Vanquish is the top of our line, so this is a car that was retailing for something about £220,000, about $300,000 car. Stunning car, each one individually numbered. Each of the cars matches the aeroplane tail number and so forth. Really cool project, and benefited charity and created great content. You knew I was going to mention him. So we've been with 007 on and off since Goldfinger. Last film was Spectre. That was the 24th Bond movie. I'm sure many of you are Bond fans. We've been in 12 of 24, so you're now thinking all the different cars and movies. You'll drive yourself nuts because you're always going to forget one, which is Her Majesty's Secret Service with George Lazenby, and it was the DBS in 1969. That's always the one people forget. This is probably one of the most famous cars in the world. So this was the gadget car. This was the pay attention 007, ejector seat, you're joking. And that in many ways actually defined our brand. I mean, we only made the DB5 for 2 years. We only built just over 1,000 of them, but it has become an icon of the brand. What's really interesting about working for a luxury and a heritage brand is that this arguably does just as much, if not more, to enhance our brand than our modern cars. And we really embrace our heritage. It's really such a special part of our brand. We're hugely proud of it, and we're very proud of the association with 007. On the other side, and the video that you saw at the start was the result of us actually handing over our brand to Rankin. So any of you know Rankin's works, pretty controversial at times. And we said Vantage is a very different, the new Vantage, very different sports car to the one it replaced. Very aggressive, looks very different from the DB11, so it starts this divergence of our models to all have much more distinct personalities. And we said to Rankin, that's the brief of the car. And the brief of the car for the designers was Hunter. So this is an aggressive car. This is a car that's built to be driven fast, have fun. And so Rankin was brought in. So the convergence of the fashion world and the automotive world through projects like this. And then finally, and with Super Bowl just around the corner, Tom Brady. Tom Brady was again another controversial. I mean, the reason why I feel like I'm behaving like a startup, we're taking actually a fair number of risks with our brand. I would say there's a lot of careful thought beforehand, but you look at our brand in America where people are rediscovering us because we've been relatively low-key for a number of years. Tom came to us, and he's been a fan of the brand for a long time. He was interested to work with a luxury brand. We signed the deal literally the Friday night before Super Bowl last year. So about halfway through Super Bowl last year, if any of you watched it, I was probably fired because the Patriots were losing massively. And then in the last 15 minutes of the game, this guy turned it around. And he did exactly the same in the last weekend exactly. And now the Patriots are off to Minneapolis. And Tom is approaching 40 years old, so he's very old for an NFL player in relative terms. But incredibly smart guy, very thoughtful, and I think the video is next. Understands our brand. Content and how we start to tell those stories. So again, back to this theme of a luxury brand selling a very expensive product that is built on desire, so needing to communicate that, and rewarding and recognizing and respecting our fans. And it's really, really important. We want to be the motor show stand where we don't turn away the 7-year-old kid who wants to come in and get a brochure. Because to get personal, I was a 7-year-old kid at a motor show stand in Earl's Court all those years ago, and I can remember being turned away, and I still hold it against the brand. Let's look at some videos.
Human spirit will always, to me, prevail. The balance will be There's an accountability to make that it's beautiful, it's functional, it's nice. And it's really it's made like that, and not this scale. It's really made for you. There'll never be another one like it.
And then on the other extreme,
I'm Chief Chassis Designer on the AMR SB program. A few weeks ago, Aston Martin Racing won the 24 Hours of Le Mans in the V8 Vantage. It's a huge race for us, a challenge, but ultimately just a distraction from the most important thing that we have to do this year. Sat down in the dark room with some important people and they said, this is what we need you to do. I know you've got a lot on, but ultimately this is huge for us. So we really can't wait to get this car out this weekend so that the motorsport world, the whole team, the rest of the people in Aston Martin can see what we've been doing for the last few months. We're gathered here today at Lagonda Palace in London for the Red Bull Soapbox Derby. Big crowd, loved it for it, laughing as everybody's walking in, seeing the amount of entries and the amount of effort that everyone's put into it. But a fun element as well, it's really, really cool. The guys at Aston Martin have done a great job with the Vantage, it looks great. Looking around it and the engineering that's gone into it, it's pretty clever stuff there. Of course, it's a bit of a leveller, you know, there's jumps and water troughs and stuff like that, so at the end of the day, who knows what's going to happen out there, hopefully it'll get down to the bottom, it'll be good fun for the crowd to watch it, and, you know, yeah, it'll be good. Awesome. That was great, yeah. I must admit when I got into the plinth I was a bit nervous, but yeah, and then it picked up speed pretty quickly. We had advice from Danny Ricciardo, the F1 driver for Red Bull Racing, so he said no mercy, that was the word, so I was just thinking that on the way down the ramp, I was like no mercy, flat out. Saw the last jump, I thought we've got this far, absolutely pin it, keep the wheels straight.
we came second. First time. Last slide. We call it the Goldilocks Strategy. And we get it wrong sometimes. We don't get it right all the time. We may push it too much in one direction, so we're always testing. But when I joined the company, the idea that we could work with an NFL quarterback and we could do a soapbox derby with Red Bull was just completely would have fried my brain. But we've taken some brave pills, we've looked at where the brand is going, we've talked to customers and we said, you know, what attracts you to Aston? There's a friendliness, there's an accessibility to the brand. I know that sounds odd for a company that's selling cars at 3 million each to say we're accessible, but genuinely we want Aston Martin to be a company that people can get behind and cheer. We feel that particularly in the UK, as you might imagine, sort of homegrown team, but around the world, the challenge I have is how I explain those values to my future customer who is female in Shanghai and will be a future SUV buyer. So it's kind of an interesting challenge. So the numbers on social media that often rule the CMO's life, we pay attention to quality, not quantity, as you might imagine. So the right audience. I mean, if I want to get lots of clicks, I just put a cat in a video probably. I mean, that's probably the way I achieve my numbers. And it should always be content. So if any of you do own an Aston Martin out there, hopefully you're feeling, oh, those are my guys. You know, that's my team. So reinforcing this pride of ownership, because obviously what we want to do is when you buy your first Aston Martin, that shouldn't be your last. And a lot of people do build collections. We're lucky enough to be in that business. Again, back to the Goldilocks, enough access. So bringing people into our brand, motorsport, and so on and so forth, but we've still got to be desirable. Because the reality is we are selling an expensive car. So there is a luxury element to it, and there's a process that should be private to the buyer, and there should be some parts of Aston Martin that are just reserved for our buyers, and I don't think there's any shame in that. And finally, hopefully being friendly is okay for a luxury brand. With that, thank you for your attention. I hope you go away a little more positive about Aston Martin and will consider us in the future. Thank you.